In 1903, Edmund Creffield, a 33-year-old immigrant from Germany and former Salvation Army captain, persuaded about 20 Salvation Army soldiers in Corvallis to join his newly founded church, which he hopefully named Brides of Christ. Locals gossiped that the group were holy rollers, a term given because they rolled on the floor for hours during their services. Holy rollers was widely used to refer to Pentecostal Christians who rolled around in a semi-trance and spoke in tongues. Creffield prophesied that one of his followers was destined to be the mother of the second Christ. But to find out which one, he needed to purify them. This he did by laying hands on them, actually all over them. To obtain the clearest divine signs which female would be the chosen one, devotees were required to remove all their garments. Local newspapers claimed they practiced free love, and that mothers were debauched in front of their children. Creffield vehemently denied these claims and said that many of the things published about him were totally untrue. In January 1904, a group of men grabbed Creffield in the street, then tarred and feathered him and ordered him to leave town. He didn't, and the next day he married one of his followers, Maud Hurt. Hurt's siblings Frank and May and their mother Sarah were also Creffield's followers. In March, church member Donna Starr, Hurt's aunt, claimed that she had adulterous relations with Creffield. Adultery was a criminal offence, and Creffield quickly went into hiding from the authorities. A warrant was issued for his arrest, and a statewide search for Creffield ensued. By the time the adultery charge was made, nearly all the male followers had left the Brides of Christ Church, leaving only Creffield and one other man as leaders of a flock of exclusively women. Women who, following Creffield's divine orders, had cut off all relations with their infidel husbands, friends and children. To outsiders, Creffield's flock was nothing more than a harem, and nothing resembling a religious congregation. The husbands of women in Creffield's flock now considered themselves not just cut off from marital relations, but cuckolded to boot. Older brothers were furious and suspicious that their little sisters had been sexually initiated. At least 3 of these male relatives purchased guns with the intent to pursue their own justice. Claims from witnesses that Creffield's followers spent their days lying on the floor face down and praying caused much concern for friends and family, and they petitioned judges to have their family members committed, and many were incarcerated for their own safety. Those over 18 years old were sent to the Oregon State Insane Asylum in Salem, and those who were younger were sent to the Boys and Girls Aid Society in Portland. In July, a month after Sarah Hurt was committed, Creffield was found naked and starving in a hole under her house. He was found guilty and sentenced to 2 years in the Oregon State Penitentiary. After he was released from prison in 1906, the unrepentant Creffield alleged that he was Christ arisen from the grave, his death being his limbo in the penitentiary. His followers believed, with a little subtle persuasion from their leader, that he was responsible for the San Francisco earthquake, and that he would destroy Corvallis. His loyal followers joined him in Waldport on the Oregon coast, including Cora Hartley and her daughter Sophie. Cora's husband Lewis was of course rather irate when Creffield, fresh out of his prison stripes, sauntered into town and called for his flock to return to the fold. In fact, Lewis Hartley was more than irate and decided enough was enough. Lewis followed them out there. When he arrived in Yaquina City, he realized he had lost their trail. 2 followers had spotted him en route and disembarked early so they could lose him. So he then hopped a ferry to Newport and tried to find a judge who would order Creffield's arrest. This was not successful. Now, furious, he spotted them as they boarded a ferry in Newport. he raced aboard, drawing and aiming his newly acquired .32 caliber revolver at Creffield, who stood on the ferry facing him just a few yards away. He cocked and fired, but the gun clicked harmlessly. The bullets he had purchased for the pistol were the wrong type for the gun. It was a rimfire pistol, and he had mistakenly loaded centerfire ammo. Creffield put on a brave face at the time, but the incident had shook him to the core. From then on, he was determined to remain elusive and keep on the move. He led his flock to the wilderness camp, but his sixth sense told him to leave for another camp, which proved providential, as Lewis Hartley had followed them there too, this time with a Winchester rifle. Foiled again, he found his prey long gone. Over the following few months, Creffield's itinerant lifestyle frustrated at least one other would-be assassin, and probably more. Hartley was only one of several men gunning for Creffield. Creffield and Maud Hurt left his group of followers at a camp near Yachats, telling them that the couple were going to British Columbia to establish a colony. While planning their escape to new pastures, Creffield ended up in Seattle. One balmy evening in May 1906, as he was walking down the street with Maud, an ex-convict named George Mitchell calmly walked up behind him, withdrew a pocket pistol without a word, and fired into the back of his target's head, sending Mr. Edmund Creffield into eternity. The assassin, George Mitchell, was the brother of two of Creffield's most devoted followers, Esther Mitchell and Donna Mitchell Starr. The latter was the woman he was convicted of committing adultery with. Mitchell didn't try and evade arrest, but patiently waited until the police arrived. Then, quietly handing over his pistol, he informed them, "I have only done my duty. I came here to kill that man, as he ruined my two sisters, and I have completed my work." As the trial commenced, there was widespread sympathy for Mitchell. His defense rested on something known as the unwritten law, principles and norms that have the effect and force of law, though they have not been formally enacted by the government. This defense might make it justifiable for a man to kill in the name of family honor. The defense argued that Mitchell murdered Creffield because he believed Creffield had lusted after Esther Mitchell, his 18-year-old sister, and had selected her to be the mother of the next Christ. When the trial concluded, the jury found Mitchell not guilty. Even though Mitchell had pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, the jury decided he was sane and still not guilty. Mitchell was a free man. Without a doubt, he had the sympathy of the jury, and in their eyes had exacted a righteous revenge on Creffield. This verdict saved him from being locked up in an asylum for the rest of his days, although his time upon earth was to be very short. A few days later, Mitchell met up with his sister Esther in a railway waiting room for what other family members hoped would be a reconciliation of sorts. Esther instead shot her older brother in the back of the head with a pearl-handled pocket pistol, in almost exactly the same way he had gunned down Creffield. Esther had killed him using a pistol she and her sister Maud had purchased with their witness fees from their brother's case. In court, she said she was doing exactly what her brother had done. The law was inadequate to the task of punishing a murderer, as evidenced by the fact that he had been acquitted, despite having admitted in court that he did it. Secondly, she pointed out that George had done exactly what he had accused Creffield of doing, branded her as a fornicator. She insisted that Creffield never had sex with her. By making the statement that he had killed Creffield because he had ruined his sisters, George had in effect ruined his sister's reputation. At her trial, Esther Mitchell refused to claim insanity, as was advised by her legal counsel. The state forced it on her anyway, and committed her to an asylum. Esther was found not guilty by reason of insanity, and was committed for a short term to the Western State Hospital in Steilacoom, Washington. A few years later, she was released from the asylum and moved back with her parents at their home in Waldport, Oregon. She married in 1914, but Esther could not find peace or happiness after all she had been through. One day, she went into town, and after buying some strychnine from a chemist, she took a massive dose and perished shortly thereafter. She followed her widowed sister, Maud Hurt Creffield, to the grave, who had committed suicide in the same manner whilst in jail awaiting trial in November 1906. Well, my dear viewers, I hope you enjoyed that presentation. Wow, what do you think about Mr. Creffield? He didn't seem to have a title, was he? He wasn't sort of father or preacher. Well, I don't know what they call, how they addressed him. God, Your Highness. Yes, I think Mr. Creffield found out very soon that you can't always have your cake and eat it. Maybe he was rubbing the females up the right way, but he certainly wasn't rubbing their menfolk up the right way. Yeah, he certainly had a target in the back of his head. I wonder how they made money. What did they do? Were they making handicrafts or something? Or was he really rich? Or did he have a benefactor? I don't know how they made money. Or were they just living from hand to mouth? They were just living in tents and stuff, I guess, living in the wilderness. And yeah, must have been a sort of precarious existence. They didn't really have a temple, did they? I don't know. Probably initially they used to meet in some hall, but or did they? I don't know. There's not enough real documentation as to regards about their premises originally. Don't know. Yeah, regarding Esther, real double standards there, wasn't there, regarding her and her brother's case? He basically committed a murder and admitted to it, and got the full sympathy of the jury. And Esther basically did the same thing to protect her honor. She said the brother had dishonored her, and they decided she was insane. She didn't seem insane. Her defense was very plausible, I thought. I think obviously they didn't keep her in for long. She was definitely not insane anywhere near that state. What a tragic life that she had, really. Obviously she revered this Creffield and loved her brother, and just a real unfortunate chain of events. It's amazing how people can follow certain figures, certain personalities. There's another case which I might be covering in the near future, a bit later. Also about another French-Canadian cult leader. Terrible, really, how people, I don't know, it's like they want to get brainwashed. One of the psychologists said that there's only a certain number who will actually fall into that. Some cults are benign. Some cults really help people and give them a sense of identity, and they want that. Other cults, the ones that we hear about usually on the news, notorious, is because they've done terrible things to their followers or with their followers to the innocent public. But there's certain people need that. They need to be able to follow someone and join a cult, to be a part of a community. Structured religions are not the same, but similar. You're part of a sort of community, you want to believe in the same thing, you feel part of a group. Whereas cults take it to the extreme. We've had some strange ones here in Switzerland too. Might cover some of those in the future too, sort of death cults. Yeah, there was that solar temple cult in Switzerland in the 90s. I think they had bases in France and Canada too. Terrible. I mean, those leaders actually murdered their followers after extorting money from them. As I was saying before, have you noticed I will start a sentence and not finish off what I was going to say? Have you noticed that? I've noticed it myself. Anyway, what I was saying was that psychiatrists were saying there's like a small percent who will actually join and follow a cult. And these cult leaders know that. They just, a lot of the people just go, oh, that's not for me, man, that's crazy. But there will be some people who will go along with it, and they're the type of people that they seek, of course. Again, not all cults are terrible, but some are really terrible. I think there was one, what was that one where the leader said that after they had sacrificed their lives, killed themselves, UFO would land and pick them up, something like that. Something sticks in my mind about that. I can't remember the exact details. Perhaps one of you guys can enlighten me again what cult that was. What do you think about also Waco? I would like to hear your comments on Waco. Were they actually... I haven't really gone in depth and researched the case, but what I did, I saw a documentary about it once, and they didn't seem to have done anything really wrong, apart from the fact they had a large cache of weapons that the government were concerned about. Please tell me if there's any more to that case, because there's still a few followers left even after all these all these years. There's still some who think that he was a good man, but were the allegations against him brought about afterwards by the government to discredit him? I would like to know your comments on that. I really don't know. I'm not pushing anything out there. I'm quite neutral. I just want to know what you think about the Waco case. All right, my dear friends, I'm going to head off now. I won't ramble too long. We'll always have stuff to entertain you. Thank you as always for your patronage. And wow, Christmas is not far away. Got a few things in December. Okay, take care. God bless, and bye-bye.